Inside the American Embassy in Berlin on October 19, 1938, America's greatest living hero accepts a swastika-adorned medal, directly from the hands of Hermann Goering. This wasn't an accident. It was the public culmination of a dark intellectual journey that pushed the world's most famous man to the absolute brink of treason and begged the question that haunts his legacy. Was Charles Lindbergh an American Nazi? To understand the fall, you must first comprehend the ascent. Before 1927, Charles Lindbergh was nobody. After 33.5 hours in the cockpit of a single-engine plane, he became the most famous human being on the planet. He hadn't just crossed the Atlantic, he had conquered the very concept of distance, of human limitation. He was the lone eagle, a modern demigod forged in gasoline and courage. America projected its highest aspirations onto him. He was handsome, modest, a Midwestern farm boy who represented a vision of clean, technical American supremacy. The world showered him with 2 million tons of ticker tape. He was awarded the Medal of Honor. His fame was absolute, his influence unimaginable. It was from this impossible height that he began his descent into the moral abyss. The journey began with an invitation. In 1936, the German government invited Lindbergh to inspect their burgeoning air force, the Luftwaffe. He was a pioneer of aviation, and the Nazis, obsessed with projecting an image of technological rebirth, saw a propaganda opportunity. Lindbergh accepted. What he saw in Germany seduced him. He toured state-of-the-art aircraft factories, personally escorted by a famed German ace, and was granted access denied to almost any other foreigner. He was catastrophically impressed. His private journals, once filled with technical observations, began to swell with ideological praise. He saw order where others saw oppression. He saw strength where others saw brutality. He wrote of the virility of the German people, their sense of decency, and contrasted it with the decay of the Western democracies. He saw the Third Reich not as a threat, but as a necessary bulwark against the forces he truly feared, the Asiatic hordes of the Soviet Union. He returned to Germany again in 1937, and again in 1938. Each visit pushed him deeper into the regime's orbit. He dined with Heinrich Himmler. He attended the opening of the 1936 Olympic Games as Goering's personal guest. He became a conduit of information, sending confidential reports back to the United States and Britain, warning with a strange mix of dread and admiration of Germany's unstoppable air power. He argued that German dominance was a fact, that war was unwinnable, that accommodation was the only answer. His warnings were not those of a neutral observer. They were the assessments of a man who believed in the superiority of the system he was describing. The true horror, however, wasn't in his military calculus, but in his biological one. Lindbergh was a fervent believer in eugenics, the grotesque pseudoscience of breeding better humans. His friendship with the surgeon Alexis Carrel had solidified these beliefs. In Germany, he saw his theories put into terrifying practice. He wrote in his diary of the necessity of preserving the white race and worried about the dilution of European blood. He saw Nazi Germany not as a perversion, but as a civilization desperately fighting for its genetic survival. In a 1939 article for Reader's Digest, he stated it was a choice between aviation and the bomb on one side and infiltration by inferior blood on the other. For Lindbergh, the greatest threat wasn't fascism, it was racial impurity. This ideology became the engine of his public actions when he returned to America. As Europe careened towards war, Lindbergh chose his side. He became the leading voice, the charismatic figurehead of the America First Committee. This wasn't a fringe movement. It was a political titan, boasting 800,000 members. Its rallies filled arenas from coast to coast. And at the center of every rally was the lone eagle, his fame giving legitimacy to a message of absolute isolationism. He argued that the war was a European affair, a squabble between foreign powers that did not concern the United States. He framed intervention as a plot, a scheme by forces who did not have America's best interests at heart. The crowds roared. They saw a hero, the boy wonder from 1927 speaking common sense, protecting their sons from a foreign grave. But beneath the patriotic veneer, a darker message festered. The movement attracted a broad coalition, but it also became a magnet for fascists and anti-Semites. Lindbergh never disavowed them. The mask finally slipped on September 11th, 1941 in Des Moines, Iowa. Before a crowd of 8,000, Lindbergh delivered the most infamous speech of his life. He claimed 3 groups were pushing America into the war: the Roosevelt administration, the British, and a third group he had, until then, avoided naming so publicly. His words were chilling and precise. The third major group, he announced, are the Jewish people. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. He had crossed a line. He was accused of blatant anti-Semitism, of importing Nazi talking points directly onto American soil. He claimed the Jewish people's greatest danger lies in their large ownership and influence in our motion pictures, our press, our radio, and our government. It was pure, unvarnished conspiratorial thinking, ripped from the pages of fascist propaganda. The America First Committee was mortally wounded. His reputation as a rational patriot was shattered. Less than 3 months later, the bombs fell on Pearl Harbor, and the debate he dominated was rendered instantly irrelevant. So we return to the central question. Was Charles Lindbergh an American Nazi? He was never a member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He never wore their uniform, save for accepting their medal. But the answer is not found in a party membership card. It is found in his words, his beliefs, and his actions. Lindbergh was a functional asset of the Third Reich. His public praise for their system and his dire warnings about their military might were used as propaganda by the Nazi regime to demoralize their opponents. His ideology, his obsession with eugenics, his belief in a superior Aryan race, his fear of racial mixing, and his paranoid anti-Semitism was indistinguishable from the core tenets of Nazism itself. He provided a mainstream heroic American face for an ideology of pure hatred. He was not a paid agent. He was something far more valuable, a true believer. Some argue he was simply a naive patriot, a man so horrified by the memory of World War I that he would do anything to prevent another. They point to his later actions. After being blocked from military service, he flew 50 combat missions in the Pacific as a civilian contractor. But this doesn't erase his past. It only complicates it. His desire for neutrality was not born of simple pacifism. It was born of a racial calculus. He believed a war against Germany would be a catastrophic, fratricidal conflict between white nations that would only benefit what he called the Oriental races. Today, the legacy is fractured. Airports and streets still bear his name, memorials to the fearless aviator of 1927. But history cannot ignore the man of 1941. The story of Charles Lindbergh is not just the story of a fallen hero. It is a permanent, chilling reminder of how easily the vocabulary of patriotism can be used to mask a philosophy of hate. It is a case study in how the allure of authoritarianism can capture even the most celebrated minds. And it is a warning that the darkest ideologies can find a champion not in a jackbooted monster, but in a figure adored by millions. An American demigod with a swastika-adorned cross hung around his neck.